Welcome to another episode of Pursuit. Tonight we're continuing on the series of Jesus in our generation. What are we talking about tonight, guys?
I don't know.
That sounds like conflict to me.
Wow, that was really good. That was really good.
I set it up. She spikes it down. It's teamwork.
Don't you dare. Anyway, today we are talking about conflict. So first question for everyone at the panel. Describe the... Is this not a panel?
I mean, it is, but...
Is there a mic or camera on you?
You know,
He didn't set it up this time.
I had a microphone there for like a month.
He didn't set it up.
Nothing. As soon as there's no microphone,
Wow, there's a lot. There's a lot of conflict in this episode already. Anyways, describe the last time you had to initiate a difficult conversation.
I'm probably gonna have to do it in like, I don't know, 40 minutes when we're done recording with the two of them.
You're gonna have to initiate it?
Probably. They're not gonna say anything.
They already said something.
Yeah, but I can't hear them because we don't have a microphone. I think the last time this would have been around Easter, like an actual difficult conversation.
You had to initiate it?
I don't really know if I initiated or the other person initiated at this point. It was initiated. I think it was one of those things where we both knew we needed to have a conversation, and we were talking about it, but not talking to each other. To the point where it might have actually been the other person that was like, yo, let's just talk about this. I can't really remember at this point. I just remember the conversation in total was probably like 5 hours. Yeah.
I feel like conflict is so awkward to me, but I think a couple months ago I actually had it was getting to the point where it was unbearable on both of our ends, like with me and my friend, and I had to have that conversation about boundaries.
The boundary conversation. Do you mind me asking if it was a guy or a girlfriend?
It was a guy.
I hate trying to have that boundary conversation with a male friend.
Why is it so bad? Like,
it's so because of the fact. Okay, so I've had the boundary conversation with a male friend, right? And it was like, fine, whatever. But then you push the boundary, and I need to readdress this conversation.
Oh, okay.
And that's where my issue lies.
Okay.
Because if you respected me as a friend and you respected the boundaries that I had already set, why are we revisiting this conversation?
Right. Okay.
I had to have that. I also had to have that conversation this weekend with a friend. And it was like, sir, why is it that I need to why is it that I have to have this difficult conversation with you right now? I hate having to, first of all, difficult conversations are just very awkward for me because depending on the situation, I don't like confrontation, but I do get heated very quickly. So funny how that works out. But it's why do you think that our generation has typically a problem with handling conflict resolution or handling conflict in general?
I feel like nobody wants to talk through things. Like, we just kind of have grown up in a sense that we're avoidant in a way. So that just becomes natural to just move on. Unless it gets to the point where it's like unbearable again, and then you have to have a conversation. But I think generally from what I'm seeing is like it's just, if you have a conflict, you just move on.
Yeah, just kind of like ignore it.
Yeah.
I agree. I think another big part of it, I don't know, I feel like no one has actually given a name to this part of like the culture. It's not meme culture. It's like what came before meme culture, where it was like you gotta like hustle and grind. So, like those like text images, everyone would post like those motivational text things. And I feel like a lot of those inspirational, motivational things were just like, yo, if you have a problem with something, just cut them off and just keep like you gotta keep grinding 24/7, so you don't have time to deal with conflicts and stuff like that. And I feel like that has somehow really permeated culture a lot, to the point where, like you said, I think people just don't handle conflict. And I think a big part is they don't know how to handle conflict because they haven't been exposed to conflict. Like with the issue I had, I knew a conversation had to happen. I was still trying to figure. For me, it was more. I was trying to figure out what to say before I just dive into it because I can get hot-headed as well. So I was like, all right, before this whole thing blows up, let me take a step back because my friend and I, we were skirting around the issue for like a solid week before we were just like, all right, we gotta talk about this. But that was the thing. Like I think I knew how to handle conflict to some degree, and was able to do my best and not just like lash out. But I see when I've gotten into other issues with other people, it's like they just start lashing out. Do you not want to salvage the friendship? And I think that and again, that all just goes back to being in conflict, knowing how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people approach the issue of a conflict, you forget. It's more so like, I have a problem with you, but it's not like, hey, I have an issue with this because of this, and instead maybe we should do like something else. It's not really like a management. It's just saying, hey, I have a problem with this. And then it takes me back to like when I was prepping for this episode. You come across Ephesians 4, right? And in verse 15 and 16 it says, instead we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. Each part has its own special work and helps the other to grow, so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. And I think it's important to remember that you need to speak the truth, yes, and you need to manage these conflicts, but you have to do it in love. You can't just come at someone and be like, I don't like that you clipped your mic on your shirt like that.
I'm not gonna lie, I really don't like how I clipped it.
Yeah.
I don't like how it clips.
But like,
thanks for drawing attention to it.
But like, instead be like, hey.
I was waiting to see what happened.
Be like, hey, maybe you should do it this instead, right? And offer like a way to solve this issue. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, because we're not taught how to properly bring these things up. Aside, like we just like ignore it, avoid it, let it build until you have to have that 5-hour conversation with someone. Until you have to cut that person off because you no longer have a way to have a healthy conversation with them.
And I mean, I think another part of it is not just like I had to work over the weekend, which I just don't like doing in general. But it was for another church. Like they had some tech issues and they were like, hey, can you come help us? And it was something as simple as restarting their router. Right?
Can you take it off and put it back on again?
Yes. One of just unplug it, plug it back in, everything worked. The problem they had, right, even though they had guys that are relatively smart when it comes to tech, they didn't have the experience I had. So as soon as I walked in, I was just like, this is probably the problem. Let me check some other things, but this is going to be the issue. And they were like, how did you figure it out so quick? I was like, because this has happened to me so many times. I know, okay, let's just start here, right? Because they started describing another problem, and I was just like, why don't you just do this? They're like, what do you mean? I was like, I just like clicked 2 buttons on the computer, and like, you solved the problem. It's about a month. I was like, how did you figure it out? Because I've had this issue so many times, I know how to fix it quickly. And I think for when it comes to conflict, either people don't know how to deal with it, or they deal with it again from the point of view of, like you were saying earlier, I'm hurting, something's bothering me, so I'm gonna address it to satisfy my feelings, not necessarily that both of us come out of it like in a better place. It's no, I just gotta come out in a better I don't really care about your feelings or anyone else's feelings. And I think that, again, to what the scripture says, right? If we're supposed to be working together, if we're supposed to be working together and, loving each other the way Christ loves us, then when we approach conflict, we have to approach it not from I'm hurting, but from I love this person. How do we stop both of us from hurting?
Yeah. So then, coming from that, why would it be like harmful to your Christian relationship to kind of avoid conflict? Or would it be detrimental at all if you just didn't discuss conflict?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important skills just in general is knowing how to problem solve, and like especially in like the space we want to honor God as much as possible. We want to be as much like him as possible, and conflict is very inevitable, so it's going to happen whether we like it or not. And I think it's the way that it's our perspective. We have to realize that we're not doing this for ourselves. Well, in a way we are, but we're also doing it to have a good image in Christ and like handle it the way that we think that God would handle
And I think, I think it also goes back to one of the previous episodes we had filmed where we were talking about the community or like the group mindset, where it's like, I'm trying to manage or solve this conflict so that as a group we can move forward, and as a group we can be better than we were before. And that's why I think that avoiding conflicts, it leads to a lot of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Not like distrust, but it just builds and it leads to.
I think distrust.
I feel like there's a better word for it though.
It is distrust. I think it's also maybe it builds. It breaks the unity within the group.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you and I have an issue and we're not talking about it, at some point, right? Maybe we keep like a surface level friendship, but if there's nothing else there, eventually that's going to affect the rest of the group as a whole and things like that. All of a sudden, hey, let's go hang out. Oh, is Asha going to be there? I don't know if I really want to go and stuff, right? And I think we've all been in those kind of situations. So it's one of those things where if you're not dealing with conflict, right? And even to that, even if you deal with a conflict and you we have an issue, we come to agreement, hey, you know what? Maybe we just shouldn't be friends. If we come to agreement in a place of love where it's like, hey, you know what? We're just really not compatible, for whatever reason, right? I think again, even that's different than us just allowing our relationship to just kind of die because no one dealt with the conflict at hand.
Because I feel like if you just let it die or just let a single problem break up like a friendship or something, you'll always have that level of distaste towards that person. Whereas if you sit down, try to talk it out, try to figure it out, and come to the conclusion that hey, we're not gonna mesh together, then it's like it's not my fault, it's not your fault, it's just we're not meant to be friends. And I did have situations like in the past where if there were conflicts among a friend group, some of them would discuss it together and others would discuss it together, right? And it would always be this one person that would say like, hey, we have this problem, we need to figure it out. And it kept happening so often to the fact that one person is like, why is it that I'm the only one bringing up the fact that you guys have this issue? And he was getting upset because no one else was addressing the issue with the person that needed to address it with. And that took a really big toll on that group of friends that I had. So much so that a lot of them don't even talk to anymore. Because it's a level of maturity that you need to have within yourself to say, I have a problem with Kevin. So instead of me going to talk to Asha and Farah and Chrissy over there and just stew in my issue, I need to talk to Kevin about it, right? And then
They said something, but you can't hear them.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's why I think that conflict management or avoiding conflict, is detrimental as a Christian. Because you're gonna burn those bridges that you should be building up, and they should be connecting to other people as well.
And to that, with what the scripture is saying about us as believers, right? If we're one body, right? And I can't find a way to work with you, right? And again, I think, and I think this goes back again to the culture and the mindset, right? A lot of people, I feel like our culture is very much like you're either 100% or you're not in it at all. So it's like if Asha and I can't be like best friends, then we can't do this at all together. Like we can't do ministry together. And I think that's the wrong mindset to have, because not everyone is gonna be your best friend, right? You're not gonna have deep, like strong relationship with everyone. But it doesn't mean that within the body of Christ you guys can't get along and have a relationship that is in a spirit of unity and harmony, right? So I think that's a big factor when it comes to these things, where we just have to learn how to, hey, all right, I'm not gonna be best friends with this person, but we're a family in Christ, and we're gonna work together, right? So I have to learn how to, okay, just work with them, right? I mean, I know I've had to work with some people where I think anything that wasn't church, I would not be caught with this person at all. I'm not gonna be hanging out with them. I'm not texting them, yo, did you see like the game or whatever the other night? It's not happening.
Games
But-
do you watch?
No, we'll see what's the next
Yeah,
one.
that's where that reference threw me a little bit.
You know, kudos for you for actually knowing something about me. I feel like you've been off most of the episodes for this year. But
Do you know what? Memories of Kevin out the door. I don't need them anymore.
This is us talking through our conflict.
Yeah.
Well, not really me. I'm Switzerland.
That's what she thinks. But I'm not gonna lie, I totally forgot where I was going with this. But I feel like I made the point.
Because okay, I think a lot of people forget that you can be friendly without being friends.
Yes.
Like just because I'm friendly with you and we can work together, it doesn't mean we have to be really good friends. Like I can have a relationship with you at work or because we're on the same project together, but outside of that, we could likely have nothing in common and nothing like compatible friend-wise or anything like that. And that's okay, and that's normal, right? Just because we are on the same page in terms of getting this done doesn't mean that our lifestyles are going to be the same either. Have you found that? Did I just delete something? I don't know what I just did. Have you found that you're someone that can engage in conflict easily, or do you kind of just avoid it until you absolutely have to deal with it?
Yeah. I think it depends on who I'm dealing with, because there are some people where if I know that they are just like easily angered, or I know that I'm just not getting along with them, I'm gonna avoid that conversation, and because it's just something that I just don't want to get into. But if I absolutely have to have that conversation, yeah, it's not gonna be great.
But you'll do it.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I have like a checklist in my head before like I'll talk to someone about a conflict, in the sense of how serious is the conflict? Like, does it actually need to be addressed? Right? Because I think not every conflict needs to be addressed at the same time. Right? And you know, again, it depends on what it is, how badly am I offended, how badly is the other person, like those things, sometimes if it's a small little thing and it happened one time, is it really worth creating that awkward conversation as compared to just kind of like letting it go, right? I think there's, you have to kind of learn to balance, okay, hey, we got to talk about this. I don't know, so I'm not going to make it into a big deal.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's also what type of person am I about to talk to, right? Am I about to talk to someone who going to be hot-headed and just be like, you know, just start lashing out, and they're gonna take the conflict to a level it doesn't need to go to, because you know they have this desire. It's like they gotta be right. They see it as I gotta win this, not hey, let's come out this better. So I will ask myself those questions before I approach someone. Same thing. It might even be something as simple as if we're in a friend group. Depending on this conversation, how will this affect the rest of our friends, right? You know, I think that kind of matter. You know, like with the group you were talking about, right? There's only one person who was saying, "Hey, you guys gotta talk about it," and then, you know, as you said, like, some people think it's funny talking about it.
Yeah. Because it takes a strain to having to be the one person that brings up other people's issues all the time.
Right, and I think that's why for me again, it's a level of okay. How, and even like if I was that person, it's like, how many times do I bring it up without just being, hey, you know what? I've told you guys what to do. You make your own choice. Do what you want to do, right? You know, I'm done with this part of the conversation. So I think all those kind of come into play. Like I'll be in like a lot of meetings sometimes, and this actually happened in church once. Someone said some wild things in a rehearsal, and my brother is there, I'm there, and my mom is there, among other people. But as far as someone said something about my family, it wasn't really a dig at us, but it kind of was. And I think my brother saw me about to charge this person, because that's how like it was a dumb thing for him to say, and he just kind of put his hand like, "Yo, relax," and I was like, okay. And looking back at it, had I actually said or done anything, it would have made things 1,000 times worse than me just knowing, all right, now it's not the time for you to address this. Wait, address it with that person privately and things like that. So I think all of that kind of runs through my head when it's like, hey, do you address it? Do you not address it?
Yeah, I think I've learned to do kind of like a similar thing. Because like, you know, when you're younger, anytime someone says something that offends you, you're gonna bring it up. Like you're gonna address it, you're gonna have that conflict. But I think as I've gotten older and as I've learned, because my mom always tells me, because I do get pretty hot-headed or whatever. She's me never. But she always has to she used to have to remind me all the time, like you need to pick and choose when it is that you're gonna bring this up. Because if you're constantly the person that's always bringing up an issue, there's only so many times where people are gonna be like, well, she's clearly the only one that ever has an issue with things, so we're just gonna disregard her at this point. And it's true, because like if you are the only person that is bringing up these issues every single time and no one else is like having these issues, then it's just gonna look like you're just nitpicking and you're just trying to find issues with things. But once you like really sit down and go through it, and like you were saying, like how many times has this happened, right? Who is this really affecting? What is this like? If I were to address this conflict with this person, how would I even go about doing it, right? Like you have to really think about how you're going to bring the situation up and how you can go about having a constructive conversation about it. Because yeah, I can say I have this problem, but what am I doing about it? Why am I bringing it up, right? Like how am I planning on solving this issue? And it's all these things that you need to have ready in your mind or like written down or somewhere for you, because the conversation isn't going anywhere if you're just going to say, hey, I have this issue. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? I don't know, just fix it. Like, do you see how that's not going to go anywhere? And then I think that's why it's helpful to recognize that we all kind of make mistakes, right? And we all can kind of create conflict with one another. Like that's a normal thing that's going to happen. But what is important about it is how we go about addressing it. And in Ephesians 4 again, the last two verses, 31 and 32, it says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. And I think when we do kind of bring that verse into perspective, and then also remember that, hey, I'm not gonna do the right thing every single time, right? Like I'm also gonna do things that are gonna upset other people. So it's not just, oh, Kevin, he bought me the wrong drink, right? Which he also kind of did. But no, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Yo.
I'm kidding. He got the right one. Anyway, who's been keeping tabs?
I'm trying to change the subject.
But like that's what I'm saying. When you remember that there are people that you are making mistakes towards other people as well, and it is up to you to also address that with love, as like as Christ would come to you, like address you, right? Where was I going with that? I'm sorry, I went on a tangent and then I forgot where I was going to end up.
So, I don't think you were in that meeting, but you remember we had like a Saturday meeting up there for church. I'm pretty sure you were in it. And Chrissy, I think you might have been there too. And they were talking about like, talking about leadership. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things was like, they did like that.
The list, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like conflict is a part of like teamwork and stuff. And everyone was just kind of confused.
No, it is 100% conflict is a part of teamwork.
But I think this is one of the reasons why I think this is a part of it. Because I think also, as you're saying, right, we have to recognize we all make mistakes. We're all more often than, I won't say more often than not, but I think a lot of us have sinful habits that we're dealing with and we're trying to I won't say get under control,
overcome.
But overcome. Or sometimes we don't even know it's a sin and we're just doing things that offend people. And I think one of the things is when you learn how to deal with conflict in like a healthy, loving way, you begin to also recognize, hey, you know what? I might be at fault here, right? It's not just, Ariel said that I got her the wrong drink, even though we all know I didn't. In my defense, you've never told me, you know what? I'm not even.
You should go.
I'm not even gonna dignify that response. You guys haven't noticed I'm being attacked right now. Gratefully. But I think when I'm thinking that mark the time when I make that in a clip. I think one of the things again about dealing with conflict, being able to recognize, hey, there are issues here that it's not like a one-sided thing. And not to say that every conflict is like that, it could be really just one-sided. But I think especially within the church, we have to be able to recognize, hey, as Paul says here, right, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior, right? If you're able to do that when it comes in with conflict, I think we'll often see positive outcomes for all parties involved, rather than one person winning and one person losing. I don't remember the episode of The Office where they have the mediation.
Oh.
And they're like, okay, there's a bunch of ways we can solve this. It can be like lose-lose, win-lose, win-win, or win-win-win, where the mediator wins sometimes. I think if we're approaching it that way, and if you watch that episode, that's all it became, right? Who gets to win in the mediation? I think when we start looking at it not, hey, who's going to win, but how do we move forward and continue to live being kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you, I think we start to deal with conflict in a much, much better way. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I have learned as someone that was young, that grew up not only within the church, but then becoming very active and then becoming like, I don't want to call myself like a leader, but like being put in like committees of things.
Being put in leadership roles.
I don't like I feel weird calling myself a leader, but like being put in, I guess, leadership roles is that, especially being one of the younger ones, you kind of have to learn how to talk to people and not make them feel that you're coming for their role, So like within the children's ministry, right? I was one of the youngest actual teachers, right? Like not the teachers' assistants, but like the actual teachers. And so when Brother Moses was kind of like mentoring me and teaching me how to do things, and we were in the meetings, I had to learn how to not like negate people's ideas, but say, well, I like your idea, but it wouldn't work because this is this and this. But we can still use your idea in this way. We can just modify it. And I had to learn how to talk to people in that way instead of making it seem like, oh, I'm young, I think I know everything, and I'm going to tell you how we need to do this instead. Because a lot of times people can kind of take it that way, especially when they're older than you, and they've been in that position for longer than you've basically been alive. And I think that's why, I think a lot of people nowadays, like within our youth group and with our like the group that I've grown up with, we have learned how to manage conflict in certain ways because we were put in those leadership roles. And it's because of that we've grown up with people that weren't taught how to manage conflict. So they've kind of learned like, well, these are the do's and don'ts that I've done, and this is what's worked, and this is what hasn't. And so they can kind of mold us and teach us the ways that you should be doing things or you shouldn't be doing things. And I think that's one of the things that you don't see a lot in a lot of groups, whether it's within the church or outside of the church. There aren't a lot of people that will sit down and tell you, hey, like, I can see where you're going with this, but you're going about it the wrong way. Or like, I can see what you're trying to do, but this is what you should be doing instead. And this is gonna help you not only get to where you're trying to go, but you'll have a team supporting you to get there, right? And I think that's why, and I think that's when you are able to recognize that you have made a mistake and you have like misstepped when you should have stood back. And then that takes it back, I think, to Ephesians 4:31 and 32. Well, 32 mainly, when it says, instead be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. Because when you take a step back and then you can be kind to them, you can be tenderhearted in addressing these conflicts and addressing these issues, you can build your relationship off of the conflict. It doesn't just become surrounded by the fact that you had conflict. But sometimes it's not that easy, right? So what can make it difficult to speak or respond in love to someone when you are angry?
I think for me, it's a lack of perspective or knowledge on the situation, because I feel like I can, like, if I'm angry, my first initial reaction is to like lash out. But like one of the most important things I've learned growing up is like you never know what someone's going through in their daily life, and how what you say can affect them and stay with them for like, you know, a long time. So yeah.
I think part of the answer in the question, right? Why is it difficult to respond in love when you're angry? It's because you're angry.
Yeah.
Right. I think that in and of itself will make it sometimes hard to just respond in love. I think it also goes back to how close are you to the person that you're angry with, right? And I think that actually can make it go both ways, in the sense of, if it's someone you're really close to, maybe you don't want to lash out at them. At the same time, I think when you are really close to someone, it's easier to lash out because you're more comfortable with them, and it's like, yo, why would you do this to me? Blah, blah. And you can it can kind of go both ways there.
Yeah.
But I think that in and of itself is, I mean, how often is our reaction or response from anger to respond in love? That's not, I feel like it's not really like the natural thing that we do. So that makes it all the more difficult, right? Because I think to really respond in love to a situation that angers you means a couple of things. One, you have to have really train yourself to respond in love. Which means the first few times you really have to stop, take a second, kind of cool off a little before you can get to a point where you're just like, okay, this is happening. I don't need to respond with like the wrath of God. I can actually respond with the love of God, right? And I think that's something that takes. It's almost like you have to recondition your mind and your spirit, your emotions to respond to situations in that way. And I think that's why it's difficult, because I think, as we said from the beginning, we're not really taught a lot of these things, right? We're just taught, okay, you're angry, just like go cool off, right? And it's a weird thing because you get told to cool off. Like, I never told, okay, what to do after you cool off.
Yeah, like that doesn't solve the issue.
Right, because if I go back to address the issue, I'm still angry about the issue, right? I just took like a 5-minute break from it. That doesn't help me solve the problem, the conflict. So I think a lot of it is being able to, as Ephesians says, respond to each other, be tender-hearted, and be kind to one another, right? I think if you can try and keep those things in mind, I think it changes how you respond when you are angry.
But yeah, going back to what you were saying, I think because generally when you think of anger, you don't also think of like being kind and loving towards it. They are just very like opposite ends of the spectrum. So that's why it is kind of harder to address a situation that you're angry about with love. But once you kind of are able to take that step back and, like you said, kind of train yourself to be like, yes, I'm angry about the situation, but I need to be kind about it as well. And once you've trained yourself to have that kind of mindset and have that ability to react in that way, only then can you really grow and have those healthy conversations about your conflict.
And what I've learned is that that takes so much practice, because I was in a situation and I was angry at first, and I was like, can't respond the way, doesn't help anyone. Try to respond in a positive way. And I realized, as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I realized you could see the look in the other person's face. They did not take it as a positive thing. And I'm just like, well, in my head, I was like, well, there goes that. I've already, whatever point I was trying to make, it wasn't trying to make a point. I was just how do we move forward? And I was like, nope, that's not going to happen with this conversation. Because I could see it in their eyes. I was like, this isn't going to happen. And I was just like, all right.
I heard you. I heard it. I had to finish the lyric. I had to finish it. But I don't have time.
But yeah, so that's
Also,
yes.
I think when you are having those hard conversations and having conflict, it's important to try to do them in person or verbally, because a lot of things can get misconstrued via text.
Oh, 100%.
So I had an altercation, I guess. I don't know. There was a text conversation that I had, right? And the message that I received was aggressive.
Or the way you received it.
I mean, I could read it for you.
Do it.
I will not. But the message.
I can read it for you.
No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. But the message, the way that it was written out, had an aggressive tone towards it. No, it's not about that. It's not about anyone here. Asha knows about the situation. And so I responded, not necessarily matching the energy, but I was like, why do you think it's okay to speak to me like this, right? To which the person responded, again, with that abrasive attitude. And we had the conflict hashed out. I said what I needed to say in a very decent, diplomatic way, right? Or so the people that I talked about told me. And then I spoke to the person again, and they were like, well, I apologize for the fact that you felt it came across that way, but that's not how I intended it. I still think it was how it was intended. But that's not for me to, I can't tell you how you decide, what tone you're using, right? That's why I think it's always important to have these conversations verbally or to be able to express yourself very explicitly if you're gonna do it over text.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I think I've only had like one serious conversation over text. And in my head, I'm still not sure how it worked out for the positive for both of us. Cause I'm like I've thought about this kind of like, and it's 100%, like I was 100% in the wrong and everything. Like that's what I was like going up to. And I'm like, how did this work that we didn't have to like at least call each other so you can like hear the person's tone? I was like, we either really know each other really well, which I don't think is the case, or they just lied and said they forgave me. And I was like, all right, but you said it. I have it in text form, so.
You wanna read it?
It was like a Snapchat conversation, so it's fine.
I have it in text. So you just said that.
I meant like in the moment.
Run it back. Side camera said if it wasn't for it, it would have happened over text. Side stage. Crew?
It's not even just there. Sidewall. What did she say though?
If it was important, it would happen over text versus like Snap. Anyway, going back to conflict management, it's important to speak about your conflict in a healthy way, it's important to address your conflict in a healthy manner. You shouldn't just hold it back, but you also shouldn't just attack someone because you have an issue with the way that they did things. Treat people with kindness.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No.